I stood in the library parking lot, staring at the message that would shatter my reality. 5 minutes earlier, I had signed the papers to sell the home I built with my own hands, the sanctuary where I raised my family, all to start a new life in Florida with my beautiful younger wife. I thought I was buying happiness. I thought I was finally moving on. Then my phone buzzed. It was my 17-year-old daughter, Lily, the girl my wife insisted hated me. The text was simple and terrifying. Dad, do not transfer that money. She is not who you think she is. I found her old iPad. Meet me at the Chicago Public Library immediately. Do not go home. When I saw the screenshots she had waiting for me, I realized the woman sleeping next to me for 2 years was a stranger who had planned my destruction before we even met. If you have ever trusted the wrong person, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. The air conditioning in the notary office was humming a low, monotonous drone that seemed to vibrate against my temples. I sat in the leather chair, my back stiff, staring at the stack of documents that separated my past from my future. The pen in my hand felt heavy, heavier than a fountain pen should, like I was holding a lead weight. Beside me, Camilla smelled of jasmine and expensive ambition. She sat poised on the edge of her seat, her hand resting lightly on my forearm, her fingers tapping a rhythm that was almost imperceptible but urgent. We were in the high-rise office of Mr. Blackwood, the closing attorney overlooking the gray skyline of Chicago. But my mind was 30 miles north in Lake Forest. I was thinking about the oak tree in the backyard of the house I was about to sell. I planted that tree 30 years ago with my late wife, Sarah. I thought about the height marks carved into the doorframe of the pantry, documenting Lily's growth from a toddler to the silent, sullen teenager she was today. I was about to sign it all away. $1.8 million. The culmination of a lifetime of architecture and design liquidated into a check that would fund a beachfront condo in Boca Raton. Mr. Blackwood cleared his throat. He adjusted his glasses and tapped the signature line on the document in front of me with a manicured finger. We just need your signature here, Mr. Turner, and the transfer of the deed will be finalized. The funds will be wired to your joint account with Mrs. Turner by Monday morning. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the paper. A sudden wave of nausea rolled through my stomach. It was the same feeling I had when I stood on the scaffolding of a new skyscraper, looking down at the concrete hundreds of feet below. It was the vertigo of no return. Why was I doing this so fast? We had only listed the house a month ago. The buyer had offered cash, no inspection, a quick close. It felt rushed. It felt like I was running away from a crime scene rather than moving toward retirement. Camilla leaned in closer. Her hair brushed against my cheek, soft and perfectly styled. She whispered in my ear, her voice a velvety mix of reassurance and steel. Do it for us, William. Think of the ocean. Think of the sunsets. You promised me we would leave the gloom of Illinois behind. You promised we would start living. Her breath was warm, but her hand on my arm tightened. It was a squeeze that bordered on painful, a physical command disguised as a loving touch. I looked at her. At 42, Camilla was vibrant, full of life, everything I wasn't at 67. She had pulled me out of the deep depression that followed Sarah's death. She had organized my life, updated my wardrobe, and filled the silence in the big house in Lake Forest. But lately, she had also filled the space between me and my daughter. Lily had moved into the guest room in the basement 6 months ago, claiming she couldn't stand being on the same floor as Camilla. Camilla had sighed and told me teenagers were difficult, that Lily was just jealous that we needed to be patient. I believed her. I wanted to believe her because the alternative was too complicated. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 in the afternoon. Camilla checked her Cartier watch, a gift I had bought her for our first anniversary. She had checked the time 3 times in the last 5 minutes. Is there a problem? William, Camilla asked aloud, this time her voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the room. The buyers are waiting. We have the dinner reservation at 5 to celebrate. Don't get cold feet now, darling. I looked at Mr. Blackwood. He checked his watch, too. Time is money in this city. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in my hand. It was just a house. Just wood and brick and glass. I was an architect. I knew better than anyone that structures were temporary. People were what mattered. And the person sitting next to me was my future. I pressed the nib of the pen to the paper. The ink flowed black and permanent. William Turner. I signed my name. I dated it. I pushed the document across the mahogany desk. It is done, Mr. Blackwood said, gathering the papers with efficient speed. Congratulations. You are officially free of the property. Camilla let out a breath I hadn't realized she was holding. She grabbed my face with both hands and kissed me hard. Thank you, William. You have no idea how happy this makes me. Her eyes were shining, glittering with an intensity that unsettled me. It wasn't just joy. It looked like hunger. It looked like victory. We stood up. I felt lightheaded, as if I had left a part of my soul on that desk. Camilla linked her arm through mine, practically dragging me toward the door. Come on, she said, pulling me toward the elevator. I told Jax to have the car ready. We are going to celebrate. I want the most expensive bottle of champagne they have. Jax. Her cousin. He had been staying in our guest house for 3 months, looking for work in the city. He drove us around, fixed things that didn't need fixing, and generally occupied space. I didn't like him. He had eyes that shifted too quickly, and a smile that felt like a sales pitch. But Camilla adored him. She said he was the only family she had left. We stepped out of the office building into the biting wind of downtown Chicago. The noise of the city hit me, sirens honking taxis, the rush of people. Jax was waiting at the curb in my black SUV, the engine idling. He saw us and flashed a thumbs up through the windshield. Camilla squeezed my arm again. I am so proud of you, she said. Monday morning, when that money hits our account, we are booking the flights. First class, one way. I reached into my pocket to turn my phone back on. I had silenced it for the meeting. The screen lit up. Several notifications flooded in. Emails from the real estate agent confirming the closing. A calendar reminder for my blood pressure medication. And then a text message. It was from Lily. My heart skipped a beat. Lily never texted me. Our communication had deteriorated to grunt and one-word answers over the last year. Camilla had told me Lily blocked my number, that she only wanted to talk through her. But here it was. A blue bubble on my screen. I stopped walking. The crowd flowed around me like water around a stone. Camilla tugged at my arm. William, come on, Jax is waiting. I ignored her. I unlocked the phone. The message was long. It wasn't the angry rant of a teenager. It was precise. It was desperate. Dad, don't do this. Don't transfer the money. She's not who you think she is. I broke into her old iPad she thought she lost. I have screenshots. I have proof. It's not just the money. It's the medicine. Please, Dad. I'm at the Harold Washington Library. Meet me on the 9th floor. Do not go home with her. Do not let her see this. The world tilted. The sounds of Chicago faded into a dull roar. The medicine. What did she mean about the medicine? I felt a sudden sharp pain in my chest, the familiar tightness I had been feeling for months. Dr. Alastair, the specialist Camilla had found for me, told me it was stress and age. He had prescribed a new regimen of pills that Camilla organized for me every morning and evening. William, Camilla's voice was no longer sweet. It was impatient. She was standing by the open car door. Jax was leaning over the center console, staring at me with an expression that was not friendly. It was calculating. Why are you staring at your phone? Who is it? I looked up at her. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't see the woman who saved me. I saw a stranger wearing an emerald green coat. I paid for holding a purse. I paid for waiting for the money I had just worked a lifetime to accumulate. Her eyes were narrowing. She took a step toward me. Panic surged through me. It was primal. If I got in that car, if I went to that celebratory dinner, I would never know the truth. Lily was smart. She was the daughter of an architect. She understood structure and foundation. She wouldn't send this unless the foundation was cracking. I shoved the phone into my pocket, forcing a mask of confusion onto my face. I patted my jacket pockets. I patted my pants. I widened my eyes, feigning the senility they had been hinting I was developing lately. My wallet, I stammered. My voice sounded weak, pathetic. I hated it, but I leaned into it. Camilla. I left my wallet in Mr. Blackwood's office. It has my ID, my credit cards. I can't go to dinner without it. Camilla rolled her eyes. A flash of pure annoyance crossed her face before she smoothed it back into concern. Oh, William, you are getting so forgetful lately. Just get in the car. Jax can drive you back around the block. No, I said, backing away slightly. The traffic is terrible. Look at it. It's gridlock. It will take Jax 20 minutes to loop around. I'll just run back up. It will be faster. You two go ahead to the restaurant. Secure the table. I know how they get on Saturday nights if you're late. I'll take an Uber and meet you there in 20 minutes. I saw the hesitation in her eyes. She looked at Jax. Jax gave a microscopic shrug. They thought I was an old man losing his grip, incapable of deception. They thought the deal was done, the papers were signed, the victory was secured. Why would I run? I was the golden goose. Fine. Camilla sighed, checking her watch again. But hurry. Do not keep us waiting. We have a lot to celebrate. And William, yes. I asked, my hand gripping the cold metal of the building's door handle. Make sure you take your evening pill as soon as you get to the restaurant. You look pale. I nodded. I forced a smile. I love you, I said. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I love you too, she said automatically. She got into the car. The door slammed shut. The tinted window rolled up, erasing her face. The black SUV merged into the heavy traffic and disappeared. I didn't go back into the building. I waited 10 seconds watching the taillights fade, and then I turned and ran. I ran toward the library with a speed I didn't know my 67-year-old legs possessed. My chest burned, but the adrenaline was stronger than the pain. I wasn't running to save my money. I was running to save my life. The Harold Washington Library is a fortress of red brick and glass in the center of the loop. I pushed through the revolving doors, gasping for air. The security guard gave me a concerned look, but I waved him off. I headed straight for the elevators. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the button for the 9th floor. The elevator ride was agonizingly slow. I checked my phone. No new messages. I checked my bank app. The account was still active. The money from the house sale hadn't hit yet. It was Saturday. Nothing would move until Monday morning. I had 48 hours. 48 hours to figure out if my daughter was a paranoid teenager or if I was a man sleeping with a monster. The doors opened to the winter garden on the 9th floor, a massive glass-domed room filled with light. It was quiet. I scanned the tables. There in the far corner, huddled over a laptop and a battered iPad with a cracked screen, was Lily. She looked terrible. She wasn't the rebellious punk kid Camilla described to her friends. She looked exhausted. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing a hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. She had dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. She looked like her mother. The resemblance pierced my heart. Lily. I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the vast space. She looked up. When she saw me, her shoulders dropped. She let out a sob she had been holding back. She stood up and ran to me. I caught her. She felt thin, too thin. When was the last time we hugged? A year till you came, she whispered into my coat. I thought you wouldn't come. I thought you would believe her. I pulled back and looked at her face. Show me, I said. Show me everything. We sat at the table. Lily opened the iPad. It was an old model one Camilla claimed she had lost a year ago. I found it in the bottom of a box in the garage when I was looking for Mom's old photo albums, Lily explained, her fingers flying over the screen. She thought the battery was dead for good. I found an old charger. She didn't wipe it, Dad. She logged out of her main accounts, but she forgot about the encrypted messaging app she uses. It auto-logged in because it was linked to the device ID. She pushed the iPad toward me. The app was called Signal. It was open to a conversation thread. The contact name wasn't Jax. It was labeled The Partner. I started reading. The timestamps went back 2 years, before I met Camilla, before the chance encounter at the art gallery where she spilled wine on my shirt and laughed about it. Entry from 2 years ago, target acquired. William Turner, architect, widower, net worth approx 3.5 million, vulnerable. He's sad and lonely. Easy mark. I felt the blood drain from my face. Target. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a lover. I was a target. I scrolled down. Entry from 6 months ago, the daughter is a problem. She's suspicious. We need to isolate her. I'm going to plant the weed in her room tomorrow. Make sure you act shocked when you find it. I remembered that day. Camilla crying, holding a bag of marijuana she claimed she found under Lily's mattress. Lily screaming that she was framed. Me shouting at my daughter, telling her I was disappointed, telling her she was out of control. I had sent her to live in the basement. I had isolated her. I had done exactly what they wanted. I scrolled further. Entry from last week. The house sale is moving too slow. He's sentimental. We need to up the dosage. The blue pills. Switch them with the ones Dr. Alistair gave us. It will make him foggy compliant. If he has a cardiac event after the sale, even better. No divorce lawyers. My hand dropped the iPad on the table with a clatter. The medicine. The blue pills she insisted I take with dinner. The ones that made me feel heavy, tired, willing to agree to anything just to go to sleep. They are drugging me, I whispered. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. She pulled a plastic bag out of her backpack. Inside was a pharmacy receipt she had retrieved from the trash. It wasn't for blood pressure medication. It was for a high-strength sedative and an antipsychotic used to treat severe schizophrenia. The name on the prescription wasn't mine. It was Jax's. She's been crushing them and putting them in your capsules, Lily said. I watched her do it yesterday through the crack in the kitchen door. Dad, they aren't just stealing the money. They are trying to kill you, or at least make you incompetent so they can put you away. I sat there in the beautiful light of the library, feeling a darkness settle over me that was absolute. The woman I had signed a deed for an hour ago was poisoning me. The man I let live in my guest house was her lover and accomplice, and I had just handed them the keys to my entire fortune. My phone buzzed again. It was Camilla. Where are you, darling? The waiter is pouring the wine. Jax is getting impatient. Don't be late. I stared at the message. The word darling looked like a threat. What do we do? Lily asked, gripping my hand. Her hand was small but strong. She was the only real thing in my world right now. I looked at the iPad. I looked at the receipt. And then I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the library window. I saw an old man, a tired man, a man who had been a fool. But then I looked deeper. I saw the man who had designed skyscrapers that withstood Chicago winters. I saw the man who had raised a daughter smart enough to crack this conspiracy. William Turner, the victim, died in that chair. William Turner, the architect of their destruction, was born. "We are going to go to dinner," I said, my voice cold and steady. "What?" Lily asked, horrified. "Dad, no, I have to," I said. "If I don't show up, they panic. If they panic, they run, or they destroy the evidence, or they transfer whatever they can access. The money from the house is in limbo until Monday. I need to keep them calm. I need to make them think everything is going according to plan." "But the pills," Lily said. "I won't take them. I'll switch them back. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to take this iPad and this receipt to the police." "No, wait. Not the police yet. They need more than just texts. They need a confession, or caught in the act." I stood up. I took the bottle of pills from my pocket, the ones Camilla had given me for the day. I looked at them, death in a blue casing. "I am going to that restaurant," I told Lily. "I am going to play the part. I am going to be the forgetful, loving, fragile old man they think I am. And while they are drinking champagne and counting my money, I am going to pave the road to their prison cells." Lily stood up too. She looked scared, but she nodded. "Be careful, Dad. Jax is dangerous. I've seen the way he looks at you when you turn your back." "I know," I said. I pulled her into a hug. I held her tighter than I had in years. "I'm sorry, Lily. I am so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let them into our home." "Fix it, Dad," she whispered. "Just fix it." "I will." I left her in the library and walked back out into the cold. I caught a cab to the restaurant. As we drove, I rehearsed my role. I loosened my tie. I ruffled my hair to look disheveled. I practiced a slight tremor in my hand. They wanted a senile old man. I would give them an Oscar-worthy performance. I would make them feel so safe, so victorious, that they wouldn't see the wrecking ball coming until it crushed them. The cab pulled up to the restaurant. Through the window, I saw them, Camilla and Jax. They were leaning close together, laughing, clinking glasses. Jax's hand was resting on her knee under the table. They looked like a couple. They looked like predators feasting on a carcass. I paid the driver. I took a deep breath of the freezing air. I stepped onto the sidewalk and walked toward the door. The game had changed. They thought they were hunting a sheep. They were about to find out they had trapped a wolf. The silence of the winter garden on the 9th floor of the library was usually a source of peace for me, a place where the architecture of the glass ceiling framed the sky I had spent a lifetime trying to reach with my buildings. But sitting there, at that metal table, the silence felt heavy, pressing against my eardrums, like the pressure before a storm. Across from me sat Lily, my daughter, the child I had allowed to be exiled to the basement of her own home. Seeing her in the stark daylight filtering through the glass dome was a physical blow. Camilla had spent the last year painting a portrait of a girl spiraling out of control, a teenager obsessed with expensive clothes, drugs, and rebellion. But the girl sitting in front of me was a ghost of that description. Her hoodie was frayed at the cuffs, her fingernails were bitten down to the quick, and her skin had the pallor of someone who hadn't seen the sun in weeks. She didn't look like a villain. She looked like a refugee in a war zone I hadn't even realized was being fought. She looked hungry, not for food, but for safety. She pushed the iPad closer to me, her movements jerky and nervous. The screen was cracked, a spider web of glass over the digital evidence that was about to eviscerate my life. I looked at her hands. They were trembling. "I need you to read the chat log from last Tuesday," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. "It is under the folder she labeled The Exit Strategy." I touched the screen. The glass felt cold. I opened the folder. It wasn't just text messages. It was a comprehensive archive of betrayal. There were PDFs of bank transfers, photos of documents I kept in my safe, and a chat thread between Camilla and a user named Wolfie. I knew that nickname. I had heard her use it on the phone once, laughing, telling me she was talking to her eccentric aunt. Wolfie was Jax. I started reading. The timestamps were from Tuesday night, while I was sleeping next to her thinking about our future in Florida. Camilla. He is so needy tonight. He keeps talking about the sunsets we are going to watch. It makes me want to vomit. I had to go into the bathroom just to breathe. He smells like old paper and desperation. Jax, just hold on, babe. The wire hits and we toss the carcass. Did you get the routing number for the Cayman account? Camilla uploaded to the drive. The account is under your name just like we planned. As soon as the sale closes on Saturday, I initiate the transfer. By the time he realizes the joint account is empty, we will be sipping margaritas on a boat he paid for. I felt a bile rise into my throat. They weren't just stealing the money. They were mocking me. They were dissecting my affection and turning it into a punchline. I scrolled up. There were photos of me sleeping, mouth open, looking vulnerable and old. Below one, Jax had commented, "Look at him. He has no idea he is already dead." Lily reached out and touched my hand. "Dad, look at the bank documents. The PDF next to the photos." I opened the file. It was a transfer authorization form for a bank in the Cayman Islands. It was already filled out. The amount was $1.8 million, the exact sale price of the house. The beneficiary was Jackson Miller, not her cousin, her lover. I recognized the address listed under his name. It was an apartment in Miami I didn't know existed. They had built a parallel life with my resources. I saw credit card statements for cards. I never signed up for bills for jewelry. I never bought receipts for five-star hotels in the city, on nights she told me she was at charity galas. I had been living with a parasite that was slowly, methodically consuming everything I had built, leaving behind nothing but a hollow shell. But the money was just numbers. I could lose money. I could rebuild. What I saw next broke something fundamental in my soul. "It is in the health app," Lily said, her voice shaking. "She tracks it. She tracks your decline like it is a project milestone." I opened the health application on the iPad. It wasn't tracking her steps or her calories. It was tracking my symptoms. There was a log, meticulous and chilling. March 3rd, administered double dose of the sedative. Subject was disoriented, slurred speech. Good. He forgot about the meeting with his accountant. April 10th, switched the blood pressure meds for the anxiety blockers. He complained of dizziness and heart palpitations. He is scared. He is clinging to me more. Perfect. May 15th. Dr. Alastair is growing suspicious of his memory loss. Need to find a new doctor. Maybe one we can pay off. Jax knows a guy. I stared at the screen. The dizziness, the fog, the days I couldn't remember where I put my keys or what I had for breakfast. I had spent months terrified that I was developing early-onset dementia just like my father. I had cried in Camilla's arms, terrified of losing my mind. She had held me, stroked my hair, and told me she would take care of me. She wasn't comforting me. She was celebrating her success. She was poisoning me not to kill me quickly, but to break my mind so completely that I would sign anything she put in front of me just to make the confusion stop. I looked at the pharmacy receipt Lily had pulled from her bag earlier. I unfolded it on the table, smoothing out the crinkles. It was for a drug called haloperidol. I recognized the name from a documentary I had watched. It was a heavy-duty antipsychotic used to sedate violent patients. It wasn't for blood pressure. It wasn't for heart health. It was a chemical straitjacket. And there was a note scribbled on the receipt in Camilla's handwriting. Crush finely. Mix with the protein shake. Taste is bitter. I remembered the protein shakes. Every morning she would make me one. For your strength, William, she would say. You need to build your muscle. I drank them gratefully. I drank her poison and thanked her for it. I looked up at Lily. Her eyes were red, filled with a mixture of fear and vindication. She had watched this happen. She had been screaming from the basement, and I had locked the door. How long have you known? I asked, my voice sounding like grinding stones. I suspected it for a long time, she said. But I found the iPad 2 days ago. I tried to tell you yesterday morning, but she wouldn't let me near you. She told me if I came upstairs, she would call the police and tell them I stole her jewelry. She said she would have me sent to juvenile detention. Dad. She has a file on me, too. Fake report cards. Letters from counselors saying I'm unstable. She was going to get rid of me the same day she got rid of you. I closed my eyes. The image of the woman I loved, the woman I thought was my second chance at happiness, dissolved. In her place was a monster of cold calculation, a predator who targeted a grieving widower and his daughter, isolating us, poisoning us, dismantling our lives piece by piece. I looked back at the screen. There was one last folder. It was labeled Aftermath. I clicked it. It contained a single document, a draft of an obituary. My obituary. William Turner, beloved husband of Camilla, passed away peacefully in his sleep, succumbed to a sudden cardiac event. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Camilla Turner Foundation. She had already written my ending. She had planned the funeral. She probably had the black dress picked out. A cold, hard rage settled in my chest, displacing the fear. It was a clarity I hadn't felt in months, probably because, for the first time in months, I hadn't taken the poison she fed me. The fog lifted. The architect in me looked at the blueprint of her plan and saw the flaws. She was arrogant. She documented everything because she was so sure she was untouchable. She thought I was a senile old fool. She thought Lily was a powerless child. She was wrong. I looked at the time on my phone. It had been 20 minutes since I left the notary. They would be at the restaurant by now, ordering drinks, laughing about the stupid old man running back for his wallet. I saved the files to my cloud drive. I forwarded them to my personal email, the one she didn't have the password to. I sent a copy to Mr. Blackwood's secure server. Lillian, I said, my voice steady, you have been braver than I ever was. You saved my life. I reached across the table and took the iPad. I put it in my briefcase. I am not going to let them win, I said. I am not going to let them take this house or this money or one more day of our lives. But we have to be smart. We cannot just run. If we run, they disappear with what they have already stolen. We have to trap them. I stood up, the metal chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed in the quiet library like a gavel coming down. I buttoned my coat. I checked my reflection in the darkened window. I looked tired, yes, but I didn't look defeated. I looked like a man who had just woken up from a nightmare and found a weapon in his hand. Go to your aunt's house in Evanston, I told Lily. Take a cab. Use this cash. Do not go home. Do not answer her calls. What are you going to do? Lily asked, standing up with me. I am going to dinner, I said. I am going to have a drink with my loving wife and her cousin. And I am going to make sure that when Monday morning comes, the only thing transferred to the Cayman Islands is their disappointment. I watched my daughter walk toward the elevator safe for the first time in years. Then I turned and walked out into the Chicago wind. It was cold, but I didn't feel it. I was burning with the need for justice. The script had been written for my demise, but I was about to rewrite the third act. And in my version, the wolf doesn't eat the sheep. The sheep burns the forest down with the wolf inside. The floor of the library seemed to tilt on its axis. One moment I was standing fueled by a righteous burning anger, and the next the ground beneath my feet turned into liquid. I reached out for the edge of the metal table, my fingers scrabbling for purchase, but my grip had no strength. It wasn't just the shock of the revelation that was buckling my knees. It was the chemistry. That morning in our sun-drenched kitchen, Camilla had handed me my daily shake with a smile that I had thought was love. Drink up, darling, she had said. You have a big day ahead. I had drunk it down, every last drop, trusting her with my life. Now that chemical cocktail, she had spiked the sedatives. The antipsychotics, whatever poison she had decided would keep me docile for the signing, was peaking in my bloodstream. My vision grayed at the edges. A ringing sound, like a high-pitched dentist's drill, bored into my ears, drowning out the ambient noise of the library. I felt my legs give way, not like a tree falling, but like a building imploding, the structural integrity simply vanishing. Dad Lily's voice was distant underwater. I felt her small hands grabbing my arm, trying to hold up 200 pounds of dead weight. I slumped into the chair, my chest heaving. Air. I couldn't get enough air. My heart was hammering a frantic, erratic rhythm against my ribs, a bird trapped in a cage. Was this the cardiac event they had joked about in their messages? Was I dying right here, surrounded by books? Before I could even strike back, the room spun. I saw flashes of the last 2 years. Camilla fixing my tie. Camilla pouring wine. Camilla holding my hand at the funeral home when we visited Sarah's grave. It all twisted and warped her face, melting into a demonic caricature of greed. The nausea was overwhelming. I leaned forward, putting my head between my knees, fighting the urge to vomit. "Dad, breathe," Lily was saying. She was rubbing my back, her hand trembling. "Do you need a doctor? Should I call 911?" "No," I gasped. The words scraped my throat. "No hospitals. If we go to the hospital, she wins. She becomes the grieving widow, legal power of attorney. She controls everything." The logic was hard to hold on to, slippery like a wet bar of soap. The drugs were designed to make me confused, to make me pliable. I had to fight them. I had to fight the fog that was trying to wrap around my brain and pull me under. I focused on the grain of the table. I focused on the crack in the iPad screen. I focused on the pain in my chest. Pain was good. Pain was real. "I am okay," I lied. I need a minute. I wasn't okay. I was broken. For the first time in 67 years, I felt truly old. Not wise, not experienced, just old. Used up. A husk. I looked at my hands resting on my knees. They were spotted with age, the skin thin like parchment. These were the hands that had drawn blueprints for museums and skyscrapers. These were the hands that had built a cradle for the girl standing next to me. Now they were shaking so violently I couldn't make them stop. I felt a tear slide down my nose and drop onto the floor. Shame burned hotter than the anger. How could I have been so stupid? I was an educated man. I was a businessman. How did I let a grifter walk into my house, sleep in my bed, and slowly poison me while I thanked her for it? I had traded my daughter's happiness for a lie. I had traded my dignity for the illusion of being loved again. "Dad, look at me." I lifted my head. The effort felt enormous. Lily was kneeling in front of me. Her eyes were dry now. The fear was gone, replaced by a fierce, protective intensity I hadn't seen since she was a little girl, defending her friends on the playground. "You are not done," she said firmly. "You are William Turner. You built the Chicago Spire. You survived Mom's death. You are not going to let a couple of cheap hustlers take you down with a protein shake and a smile. Get up." Her words were like a splash of ice water. She was right. I was acting exactly how Camilla wanted me to act. Weak, pathetic, a victim. "I need—" "The restroom," I mumbled. I stood up. It took 2 tries. I swayed, using the table as a crutch. Lily moved to help me, but I held up a hand. "I need to do this," I said. "I need to walk." The walk to the public restroom was the hardest journey of my life. Every step was a battle against the chemical leash Camilla had put on me. My feet felt heavy, like I was walking through wet concrete. People glanced at me, an old man in an expensive suit stumbling, looking drunk in the middle of the afternoon. I didn't care. I just kept moving. I pushed into the bathroom. It was empty, smelling of industrial cleaner and stale water. I went to the sink and gripped the cold porcelain. I stared into the mirror. The man looking back at me was pathetic. His eyes were red-rimmed and watery. His skin was gray. His hair was disheveled, the expensive cut Camilla had insisted upon now looking messy and sad. He looked like a man who was ready for a nursing home. He looked like a man who needed a guardian. This was the man she saw. This was the man she laughed about with her lover. A mark. A wallet with a pulse. I turned on the faucet. The water ran cold. I cupped my hands and splashed it onto my face. Once, twice, 3 times. The shock of the cold against my skin cut through some of the drug-induced haze. I scrubbed my face, rubbing hard as if I could wash away the last 2 years. I scrubbed until my skin was raw and red. I looked in the mirror again. Water dripped from my chin. "No," I whispered. I straightened my back. I adjusted my collar. I tightened the knot of my tie. The nice old man who wanted to retire to Florida. He died in this bathroom. The man who just wanted everyone to get along. He was gone. I looked deep into my own pupils, dilated from the medication. Inside that gray, foggy gaze, a spark ignited. It was cold. It was hard. It was the part of me that dealt with corrupt contractors and city zoning boards. It was the architect who knew that if a foundation is rotten, you don't patch it. You demolish the building. They wanted a show, I would give them a show. But I wasn't going to be the clown. I was going to be the ringmaster. I didn't just want to escape. Escaping was for prey. If I canceled the sale now, if I ran to the police now, they would scatter. Jax would disappear back into the woodwork. Camilla would lawyer up, claim I was senile, claim the texts were fabricated, claim the drugs were for my own good. It would be a messy, long battle, and they might slip away with the cash they had already siphoned. No, that wasn't enough. I didn't want them to leave. I wanted them to pay. I wanted to see the hope die in their eyes the way it had just died in mine. I formulated the plan in the silence of that tiled room. It came to me whole, a blueprint for their destruction. I wouldn't stop the transfer. Not yet. I would let them think they had won. I would let them taste the victory. I would let them get so close to the finish line that they would drop their guard completely. And then, when they were most vulnerable, when they were drunk on their own success, I would pull the floor out from under them. I splashed water on my face one last time, not to wake up, but to set the mask. I practiced the smile. The confused, slightly doddering smile of William the husband. It looked genuine. It looked harmless. I walked out of the bathroom. My stride was stronger. The drugs were still in my system. My body still felt heavy, but my mind was a razor blade. I found Lily waiting outside the door, pacing. She looked at me, scanning my face for signs of collapse. "Dad," she asked. I took her shoulders. "I am okay," I said. My voice was different. It was deeper, steady. "Did you call the bank?" she asked. "Did you stop it?" "No," I said. Her face fell. "Dad, you can't." "I am not stopping it, Lily," I interrupted. "Because if I stop it, they know I know. I am going to let the transaction pending status sit there. It is Saturday. Nothing moves until Monday morning. That gives me 36 hours. 36 hours for what to bury them," I said. I pulled out my phone. I checked the time. I was late for dinner. Perfect. Being late would make me seem flustered, confused. It would sell the act. "I need you to go to your aunt's house," I repeated. "Do not post anything on social media. Do not text your friends. You are a ghost until Monday. Can you do that?" She nodded, her eyes wide. She saw the change in me. She realized she wasn't talking to her fragile father anymore. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I am going to go have a drink with my wife," I said. "I am going to toast to our new life. And I am going to make her believe that I am the luckiest man in the world." I walked Lily to the elevator. I hugged her, and this time I was the one providing the strength. "Go," I said. The doors closed, taking the only person I loved to safety. I turned toward the exit. The city lights were coming on through the glass walls of the library. Chicago was a tough city. It ate the weak. Camilla thought she was the predator in this concrete jungle. She thought she had found a wounded animal. I buttoned my coat and walked out into the night. The vertigo was gone. The nausea was gone. All that was left was a cold mathematical precision. I hailed a cab. To the Prime House, I told the driver. And step on it. My wife is waiting. The taxi merged into traffic. I leaned back and closed my eyes not to sleep, but to visualize the structure of my lies. I had to build a reality for them that was so enticing, so perfect, they wouldn't notice the walls were made of dynamite. I checked my pocket for the bottle of pills. I would need to switch them out. I would need to be careful. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was the architect, and I was about to design their ruin. The maitre d' scanned my disheveled appearance with a practiced, critical eye, his gaze lingering on my wind-blown hair and the slight sheen of sweat on my forehead. I didn't look like the man who had reservation for 3 under the name Turner. I looked like a man who had gotten lost on his way to the bingo hall. "Right this way, sir," he said, his tone clipped, guiding me through the dim, amber-lit dining room. The air was thick with the scent of dry-aged beef and expensive cologne, a sensory overload that would have normally made my stomach rumble but now just felt cloying. I spotted them in a semi-private booth near the back, the kind of table reserved for power brokers and lovers. They looked like royalty. Camilla was glowing, her skin luminous in the candlelight, laughing at something Jax had just whispered. Jax was leaning back, one arm draped casually over the leather banquette, behind her, a glass of dark red wine in his other hand. They looked comfortable. They looked like they owned the place. They looked like they had already spent my money. I paused for a fraction of a second to compose my features. I let my shoulders slump forward. I relaxed the muscles in my face until my jaw hung slightly loose. I summoned a tremor into my right hand. Then I shuffled forward. "There he is," Camilla announced, her voice pitching up into that performative register she used for audiences. "We were getting worried, William. You have been gone almost an hour." I reached the table and grabbed the back of a chair for support, playing up the exhaustion. "I am sorry," I mumbled, avoiding her eyes. The traffic on Wacker Drive was a nightmare. And then I couldn't find the Uber. I got turned around. Jax chuckled, a low, wet sound. He took a sip of wine, his eyes mocking me over the rim of the glass. "The city can be confusing at night, Bill. Good thing you made it before the kitchen closed." He didn't call me William. He didn't call me Mr. Turner. He called me Bill with a familiarity he hadn't earned, stripping away my dignity with a single syllable. I sat down heavily. The leather seat squeaked. I looked at the bottle on the table. It was a Chateau Margaux, a $2,000 bottle of wine. I hadn't ordered it. They had ordered it before I even arrived, confident that my credit card would cover it, confident that I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. "That is a nice wine," I said, my voice sounding thin. "We are celebrating, darling," Camilla said, pouring me a glass. She pushed it toward me. "Did you take your pill? You look flushed." I patted my pocket. "I forgot," I said, infusing my voice with panic. "I must have left them in the car, or maybe at the office." Camilla's smile tightened at the edges. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face before she smoothed it over. "It is okay, William. I have a spare in my purse. I always come prepared." She reached into her emerald handbag and pulled out a small, unlabeled orange bottle. She shook one blue pill into her palm and held it out to me. Her nails were painted a deep blood red. "Here, take it with the wine. It will help you relax." I looked at the pill, the chemical straitjacket. I took it with a shaking hand. I pretended to put it in my mouth, but as I raised the glass of wine to my lips, I let the pill slip into the sleeve of my jacket. It was a magician's trick, a sleight of hand I had practiced in the cab ride over. I took a large gulp of wine to sell the act. "Thank you, my love," I said. "You always take care of me." Jax snorted. "Someone has to write. You would lose your head if it wasn't screwed on old-timer." He reached over and patted my shoulder. It wasn't a friendly pat. It was heavy, condescending, the kind of pat you give a dog you are about to put outside. His hand lingered a moment too long, his fingers digging into my suit jacket. I could smell the alcohol on his breath mixed with the mint of his chewing gum. So Jax said, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming with greed. "The lawyer said everything went smooth. The wire is set." I nodded slowly, staring into my wineglass. "Yes. Monday morning. It is all done." Camilla let out a sigh of pure ecstasy. She clinked her glass against Jax's. "To new beginnings," she said. "To Florida," Jax added, winking at her. I watched them drink. I watched the wine slide down their throats. I watched them toast to my destruction on my dime. A cold, clinical detachment took over my mind. I was no longer sitting at dinner with my wife and her cousin. I was a structural engineer inspecting a building that was about to be condemned. I was looking for the stress fractures. Jax was arrogant. That was a fracture. Camilla was greedy. That was another. They were so focused on the finish line they had stopped looking at the track. I picked up the heavy menu. The letters swam before my eyes, not because I couldn't read them, but because I needed to look confused. I don't know what to get," I stammered. "It all looks complicated." "Just get the filet," Bill Jax said, not even looking at me. He was texting under the table. I could see the reflection of the screen in his wineglass. He was probably messaging his bookie or looking up jet skis. Soft, easy to chew. I hate filet. I have always preferred a ribeye bone-in. But I nodded. "Okay." The filet. The waiter arrived. He was young, efficient, and clearly deferential to Jax, who was projecting the aura of the one paying the bill. "The lady will have the lobster," Jax ordered. "I will take the porterhouse rare, and bring the old man the petite filet well done, and another bottle well done." He ordered my steak ruined. It was a petty small cruelty, but it told me everything. He didn't just want my money. He wanted to erase me. He wanted to assert dominance in every small, miserable way he could. I reached for my water glass. My hand trembled. I let the tremor travel up my arm. I let my fingers spasm just as they touched the stem of my wineglass. The glass tipped. Red wine exploded across the pristine white tablecloth. It soaked into the fabric, spreading like a dark bloodstain toward Camilla's lap. "Oh, God!" Camilla shrieked, jumping back. She grabbed her napkin and dabbed frantically at the few drops that had splashed onto her dress. "William, look! What you did!" I stared at the stain, my mouth open in feigned horror. I am so sorry. My hand, it just slipped. I don't know what happened." I grabbed my napkin and tried to help, but I made it worse, knocking over the salt shaker. "Stop." Jax barked. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was hard, painful. "Just stop, Bill. You are making a mess." Jesus Christ. He looked at the waiter who had rushed over. "Can we get this cleaned up and maybe bring him a sippy cup next time?" The waiter looked uncomfortable but nodded. "Of course, sir. Right away." I sat back, pulling my hand from Jax's grip. I shrank into myself, making myself look smaller, more pathetic. "I am clumsy," I whispered. "I am getting so clumsy." Camilla sighed a long, suffering sound. She reached over and patted my hand, but her eyes were cold. She looked at me with the same expression one would look at a stain on a rug that refused to come out. "It is okay, William," she said, her voice tight. "It is just the stress. The move will be good for you. You need to rest. You need to stop worrying about things. Leave the thinking to us." Jax laughed. Yeah, leave the heavy lifting to the young bucks, Pops. We got you covered. He looked at Camilla. His eyes dropped to her neckline, then back up to her face. It was a look of raw, possessive lust. He did it right in front of me. He didn't even try to hide it. He thought I was too medicated, too blind, too stupid to see it. I saw it. I filed it away. I watched them eat. I picked at my overcooked steak, forcing myself to swallow the dry meat. I listened to them talk about the condo in Boca. They argued about the color of the granite countertops. They talked about buying a boat. They talked about my money as if it were already theirs, as if I were just the trustee of an account that had finally matured. They ignored me. I became a piece of furniture, a ghost at my own funeral feast. And as I watched them, a terrifying calm settled over me. They were celebrating their victory. They thought the war was over. They didn't know I was currently mining the harbor. I looked at Jax cutting his steak with savage efficiency. I looked at Camilla sipping her wine with her pinky extended. Enjoy it, I thought. Enjoy the wine. Enjoy the steak. Enjoy the feeling of being rich. Because this is the last meal you will ever eat as free people. I let out a small, shuddering breath. Are you okay, darling? Camilla asked, glancing at me. You are vibrating. I am just excited, I said. My voice was a rasp. Excited for Monday. Jax raised his glass. To Monday, he grinned. The day everything changes. I raised my water glass. To Monday, I echoed. I drank the water. It was cool and clean. It washed away the taste of the dry meat. But nothing could wash away the taste of their betrayal, that I would have to burn out. And I had the matches right here in my pocket. The silence in the house was not peaceful, it was predatory. Lying in the king-sized bed I had shared with Sarah for 30 years, and with Camilla for 2, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of my wife's breathing. It was slow, deep, the sleep of the just, or the sleep of the sociopath, who had drunk half a bottle of expensive wine and believed she had won the lottery. Beside her, I was a statue of tension. Every muscle was coiled, every nerve ending, firing. I had spent the last 2 hours feigning the heavy snoring slumber of a medicated old man. But my mind was racing at 100 miles an hour. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:14 a.m. This was the witching hour. This was the time when the house settled, when the timbers groaned, and when secrets were either buried or unearthed. I knew I couldn't stay in bed. I had work to do. I slid my legs out from under the heavy down comforter, moving with agonizing slowness. The mattress, a memory foam monstrosity Camilla had insisted on buying because it was better for my back, absorbed my movement without a sound. I stood up, my bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. I waited. Camilla shifted, mumbling something incoherent, and then settled back into her rhythm. I crept out of the bedroom, leaving the door ajar, just a crack, so I could hear if she stirred. The hallway was bathed in the ghostly blue light of the moon, filtering through the skylight. This house, which I had designed to capture light, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows. I moved toward the stairs, skipping the 3rd step from the top, because I knew it creaked. It was a muscle memory from raising a teenage daughter, a habit I never thought would save my life. My first destination was the kitchen. I needed to neutralize the weapon she used against me every day. In the pocket of my pajama bottoms, I felt the small plastic bag Lily had pressed into my hand at the library. It contained a generic brand of blood pressure medication, Safe Standard, and crucially similar in shape and color to the poison Camilla had been feeding me. I reached the kitchen island. The marble surface was cold under my fingertips. I opened the cabinet where she kept my daily regimen. There it was, the orange prescription bottle with my name on it. I picked it up. It rattled. The sound seemed deafening in the silent kitchen. I froze, looking up at the ceiling, waiting for footsteps. Nothing. I unscrewed the cap and dumped the pills onto a paper towel. They looked innocent. Small, pale blue ovals. To the naked eye, they were medicine. To me, they were bullets. I took a handful of the pills Lily had given me and compared them. They were close enough. In the dim light of the kitchen or when mixed into a protein shake, no one would notice the difference. I swept Camilla's poison into a small Ziploc bag I had brought down. I wasn't going to flush them. I needed them. I needed the lab results. I needed the jury to see the chemical warfare she had waged on my body. I shoved the bag deep into my pocket. Then I filled the prescription bottle with the safe pills. I screwed the cap back on and placed it exactly where I had found it, turning the label so it faced outward at the precise angle she had left it. She was meticulous. I had to be a ghost. Step 1 complete. Now for the eyes. I moved into the living room. This was the staging ground. This was where they sat and drank my liquor and laughed about my demise. I needed to see it. I needed the jury to see it. I pulled out the first micro camera Lily had given me. It was tiny, no bigger than a button, with a battery life that would last 48 hours. Lily, my brilliant tech-savvy girl, had rigged them to upload directly to a cloud server. I looked around the room. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a collection of antique vases Camilla had bought with my credit card last month. They were ugly, ostentatious things, but right now they were perfect. I took the largest one, a porcelain monstrosity with gold leaf vines, and carefully positioned the camera amidst the artificial flowers she had stuffed inside. The lens peered out through the leaves, commanding a perfect view of the sofa and the liquor cabinet. I moved to the hallway. There was a console table there with a decorative teddy bear, a ridiculous thing holding a heart that said, "Welcome." It was a gift from Jax when he first moved in, a gesture I now realized was mocking. I picked up the bear. I made a small incision in the seam of its neck with a penknife I had grabbed from the kitchen drawer. I slid the second camera inside, positioning the lens so it looked through the plastic weave of the bear's nose. It pointed directly at the front door and the staircase. No one would enter or leave this house without me knowing. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of adrenaline. I felt like a burglar in my own home. I was sweating the cold sweat of high-stakes fear. If she came down now, if she saw me with a knife and a teddy bear, the charade would be over. She wouldn't call the police. She would call Jax. And I wasn't sure I could physically fight a man 20 years my junior who had nothing to lose. I had one camera left, the most important one. I needed to put it in the study. My study was my sanctuary. It was where I kept the blueprints of my life's work, my safe, my financial records. It was the room where the final act of this tragedy would play out. I knew that as soon as the money didn't show up on Monday, or maybe even before, they would tear that room apart looking for cash bonds, anything liquid. I walked down the hallway to the study door. I turned the handle. It was locked. I frowned. I never locked my study. Camilla must have started locking it. A subtle way of exerting control, of keeping me out of my own business. I felt a surge of rage, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. I needed to think. I knelt down and checked the lock. It was a simple privacy lock, easily popped with a pin. I went back to the kitchen, found a paperclip in the junk drawer, and straightened it out. I returned to the door. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath, steadying them against the wood. I inserted the clip, wiggled it. Click. The door swung open. The smell of old paper and leather hit me. It smelled like safety. I stepped inside and closed the door softly behind me. I didn't turn on the light. I navigated by memory and moonlight. I went to the bookshelf behind my desk. I found the row of architectural encyclopedias, heavy volumes I hadn't opened in years. I pulled one out slightly, creating a gap. I wedged the final camera into the spine of the book, angling it downward so it covered the desk and the floor, safe in the corner. It was done. The trap was set. I turned to leave. I reached for the doorknob, and then I heard it. The creak of a floorboard. Right outside the door. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, my hand hovering inches from the brass knob. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't heard the stairs. She must have moved like a cat. The doorknob turned. It rattled. I had locked it from the inside again, out of habit. William, her voice was muffled by the wood, but it was sharp. It wasn't the voice of a sleeping woman. It was alert. Suspicious. William, open this door. Panic, cold, and absolute washed over me. I looked around the room. I had nowhere to hide. If I didn't open it, she would get the key. If I did open it, I had to explain why I was in my locked study at 3:00 a.m. fully awake when I was supposed to be in a drug-induced coma. Think, William. Think. You are the architect. You build realities. What reality does she believe in? She believes I am sick. She believes I am losing my mind. She believes the drugs make me confused. I didn't open the door. Instead, I backed away from it. I knocked a stack of books off the corner of the desk. They hit the floor with a heavy thud. William, Camilla shouted. I heard the scratch of a key in the lock. She had the spare. Of course she did. The lock clicked. The door flew open. Camilla stood there, silhouetted by the hall light. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair wild, her eyes narrowed. She scanned the room. She saw me standing in the corner near the window, staring blankly at the wall. I let my arms hang loose at my sides. I didn't look at her. I looked through the wall at a horizon that wasn't there. I started to sway. William, she asked, stepping into the room. Her voice dropped an octave, shifting from anger to caution. What are you doing? I mumbled. I let the words slur together, a stream of nonsense syllables. The foundation. The concrete is wet. We need more steel. The wind shear. I turned slowly toward her, keeping my eyes unfocused. I looked at her chin, not her eyes. Sarah, I asked. Sarah, the blueprints are wrong. The tower is going to fall. Camilla stopped. She let out a breath, her shoulders sagging. She wasn't afraid of me. She was annoyed. Oh, for God's sake, she hissed. You are sleepwalking again. Jesus, those pills really mess you up. She walked over to me. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was rough. It is not Sarah, William. It is Camilla. Sarah is dead. You are dreaming. Come back to bed. I resisted slightly, planting my feet. No, the inspection. Monday. The money. She froze. Her grip tightened. What did you say? I let my head loll to the side. The money. For the concrete. Gotta pay the men. Monday morning. She relaxed. A cruel smile touched her lips in the darkness. Yes, darling. Monday morning. The money will be there. Don't you worry about the concrete. She pulled me toward the door. I stumbled, dragging my feet, playing the part of the geriatric invalid to perfection. She led me out of the study, leaving the mess of books on the floor. You are a mess, William, she muttered, as she marched me up the stairs. A complete mess. I don't know how you ran a company. You can barely run yourself. We reached the bedroom. She pushed me toward the bed. I climbed in, letting my limbs fall heavily onto the mattress. I pulled the covers up to my chin. She stood over me for a moment, watching. I closed my eyes, letting my breathing even out, mimicking the onset of sleep. I hope you sleep for a week, she whispered into the dark. I am so tired of babysitting a corpse. She got back into bed. She turned her back to me. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. I lay there in the dark, my heart still racing, my body cold with sweat. It had been close. Too close. But I had seen something in her eyes when she thought I was delusional. I had seen contempt, yes, but I had also seen confidence. She thought I was broken. She thought the drugs had finally snapped my tether to reality. She thought she was safe. I stared at the back of her head. Sleep well. Camilla, I thought. Dream of your millions. Dream of the beach. Because when you wake up, the only thing waiting for you is the concrete reality of what you have done. I watched the first gray light of dawn creep across the ceiling. I didn't sleep. I lay in the tiger's den listening to the beast breathe, and I sharpened my knife. The cameras were rolling. The stage was set. Tomorrow was Sunday, the day of rest. But for me, it would be the day I baited the hook. Sunday morning broke over Lake Forest with a deceptive tranquility that felt almost mocking. The sunlight streamed through the high bay windows of the kitchen, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting long golden shadows across the granite countertops. It was the kind of morning that belonged in a magazine spread about domestic bliss, not in a house that had become a battlefield. I sat at the kitchen island, my hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, the ceramic warm against my palms. I wasn't drinking it. I was using the heat to steady my nerves. I had spent the last hour meticulously preparing my appearance. I shaved, but I left a small patch of stubble on my jawline. I combed my hair, but I parted it slightly off-center. I put on a crisp, button-down shirt, but I buttoned it wrong at the cuff. I needed to look like a man who was trying to pull himself together, but was missing the mark by just a fraction. I needed to look like a man who was lucid enough to sign a check, but broken enough to be led to the slaughter. I heard the click of heels on the hardwood floor. Camilla entered the kitchen. She wasn't wearing her usual Sunday loungewear. She was dressed in sharp trousers and a silk blouse, her hair pulled back tight. She looked like a CEO preparing for a hostile takeover. She was edgy. The tension radiated off her in waves. The $1.8 million from the house sale was currently sitting in escrow, waiting for the banks to open on Monday morning. It was the longest 24 hours of her life. "William," she said, her voice tight. "You are up early. Did you sleep?" I looked up slowly. I let a slow, dopey smile spread across my face. "I slept wonderful," I lied. "Best sleep in years." I had a dream, Camilla. A vivid dream." She poured herself a coffee, her movements jerky. She didn't look at me. She was checking her phone, probably texting Jax. "That is nice, William. Drink your shake. I made it for you. It is in the fridge." She was still trying to drug me. She wanted me sedated until the wire transfer cleared. I ignored the fridge. "It wasn't just a dream," I said, pitching my voice lower, adding a conspiratorial note. "It was a memory. About my grandfather. About the vault." Camilla paused. The word vault froze her hand in midair. She turned slowly to face me. Her eyes narrowed, scanning my face for signs of dementia, but the greed was already waking up behind her pupils. "What vault?" she asked. I took a deep breath. This was the gamble. This was the moment I pushed all my chips into the center of the table. If she didn't buy this, if she thought I was just rambling, she would drug me into a coma within the hour. I had to sell the lie of a lifetime. "I never told you," I said, looking down at my coffee as if ashamed. "Because Sarah hated it. She called it blood money. She made me swear I would never touch it. She said we had enough with my architecture fees. She said that money was cursed by my grandfather's sins." Camilla moved closer. She put her phone down on the counter. The screen was dark, but I knew Jax was waiting on the other end. "What money, William? How much money?" I looked up at her. I made my eyes wide, innocent, pleading for understanding. "The Turner Family Trust," I whispered. "My grandfather set it up in 1955. It was designed to mature only when the primary heir turned 67 and had liquidated their primary residence. It was his way of ensuring we didn't squander it young. He wanted us to be settled. I paused for effect. I saw her throat work as she swallowed. And she urged. And I turned 67 in January, I said. And yesterday I sold the residence. The conditions are met, Camilla. She gripped the edge of the counter. Her knuckles were white. How much is in the trust? William, I looked around the empty kitchen, as if expecting ghosts to be listening. With the interest, I said softly. With the compounding over 60 years, last time Mr. Blackwood showed me the statement, it was just over $3 million. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear a bird singing outside. I could hear the sudden sharp intake of breath from my wife. $3 million, she breathed. Plus the house money, I added. It would be nearly $5 million, Camilla. We could buy the house in Boca outright. We could buy a boat. We wouldn't just be retiring. We would be kings. I watched the calculation happen in real time. Her eyes darted back and forth, processing the new data. 1.8 million was freedom. 5 million was an empire. 5 million was leave Jax behind and find a 20-year-old model money. Why didn't you tell me, she asked, her voice trembling. Not with anger, but with the adrenaline of a gambler who just hit the jackpot. Because I was afraid, I said. I was afraid of the curse. But last night, when you took care of me, when you put me to bed, I realized you are the only thing that matters. I want to give it to you, Camilla. I want you to have it all. She rushed around the island and hugged me. It was the tightest, most genuine hug she had given me in months, fueled entirely by avarice. Oh, William, she gushed. That is wonderful. We have to call Mr. Blackwood. We have to get it. I pulled back slightly. I looked worried. That is the problem, I said. I called his private line this morning while you were in the shower. He said the paperwork is ready. He has been waiting for this day, But what? Her voice snapped like a whip. The trust stipulations are very strict, I said. Grandfather was a paranoid man. He required spousal consent for the release. Both of us. In person. With wet ink signatures. Mr. Blackwood said, if we come to his office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, right when the bank opens, we can sign the release. The funds would clear by noon. Monday morning. 9 a.m. I watched her face. I saw the conflict. She had a plan. The plan was to wire the house money to the Cayman Islands at 9:01 a.m. on Monday. Jax was probably set up to execute the second leg of the transfer immediately. If she came to the lawyer's office with me, she couldn't supervise the wire. If she delayed the wire to sign for the trust, she risked a window of vulnerability. But $3 million. It hung in the air between us, a golden, shimmering mirage. I don't know, William, she said, biting her lip. We have the movers coming. And the wire for the house. It is a lot to coordinate. I shrugged. I tried to look indifferent. We don't have to do it tomorrow, I said. We can do it next month. Or next year. The money isn't going anywhere. We can just focus on the house money for now. That should be enough for a while. That was the hook. Telling a greedy person to wait. Telling a predator to leave meat on the table. No, she said quickly. No, we shouldn't wait. You know how volatile the markets are. We should secure it. She grabbed her phone. I need to check the flight schedules. I need to make a call. She walked out onto the patio, sliding the glass door shut behind her. I didn't need a listening device to know who she was calling. She was calling Jax. She was telling him the plan had changed. She was telling him to hold the transfer order. She was telling him that the old man had a secret fortune and she was going to bleed him dry before she dumped the body. I sat there sipping my cold coffee. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. She had taken the bait. She had swallowed it whole. By delaying the wire transfer to chase the trust fund she was giving me, the one thing I desperately needed: physical presence in a room with a witness. If she tried to transfer the money remotely, I could chase it, but it would be hard. If I got her into Blackwood's office thinking she was signing for $3 million, I could hand her a pen and watch her sign her own confession. She came back inside 5 minutes later. She looked flushed, excited. Her eyes were bright. "It is settled," she said, smiling that shark-like smile. "I canceled the morning flight. We will go to Mr. Blackwood's at 9. Then we go to the airport. First class to Miami. It is going to be a perfect day, William." "Yes," I said, standing up. "It is going to be perfect." I walked over to the sink and poured the rest of my coffee down the drain. I turned on the tap to rinse the cup. The water swirled down the dark hole, disappearing into the dark. Camilla came up behind me. She wrapped her arms around my waist. She rested her chin on my shoulder. "You are a good man, William," she whispered. "A very generous man." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the bottle of pills, the one I had switched last night. "Here," she said. "Take your morning dose. We don't want you getting dizzy with all this excitement." I took the pill from her hand. It was the placebo I had planted. I popped it into my mouth and swallowed it dry. "Thank you," I said. "I feel better already." She patted my chest. "Go rest in the study, darling. I have some packing to finish. I want everything to be ready for tomorrow." I watched her walk away, her hips swaying, already walking with the swagger of a multimillionaire. She went upstairs to pack my bags. She was packing clothes I would never wear for a trip I would never take to a life that didn't exist. I went into my study. I closed the door. I looked at the camera hidden in the spine of the encyclopedia. The little red light was not visible, but I knew it was recording. I sat at my desk. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and a pen. I began to write. Not a will, not a suicide note. I wrote a list. Item 1, contact Blackwood. Confirm the trust papers are actually the fraud admission documents. Item 2, text Lily. Tell her the trap is sprung. Item 3, survive the night. The house was quiet around me, but it was the silence of a held breath. The storm was coming. Monday morning was coming. And when the sun rose tomorrow, it wouldn't be illuminating a new beginning for Camilla Turner. It would be illuminating the wreckage of her greed. I leaned back in my chair and waited. The architect was ready to demolish the house. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent, but the air inside the small metal box crackled with a tension that threatened to snap the cables. Monday morning had arrived in Chicago with a leaden gray sky and a biting wind that rattled the glass of the high-rise lobby, but Camilla didn't notice the weather. She was radiating a heat of her own, a feverish energy that made her tap her stiletto heel against the marble floor in a frantic staccato rhythm. She was dressed for a coronation, wearing a white power suit that cost more than my first car, her hair pulled back so tight it pulled the skin around her eyes taut. She looked predatory. She looked victorious. Standing in the corner of the elevator was Jax. He had insisted on coming as a witness claiming family support, but I knew the truth. He was there to ensure the asset me didn't wander off or have a sudden moment of clarity before the ink was dry. He wore a suit that fit him poorly, the fabric straining across his shoulders, and he smelled of stale cigarettes and mints. He kept checking his phone, probably refreshing the Cayman bank account balance, waiting for the first tranche of the house money to hit. He didn't know. I had called the bank at 8:00 a.m. from the bathroom and placed a 24-hour freeze on all outgoing wires due to suspicious activity. He was refreshing a dead screen. The doors opened with a soft chime. We walked down the plush carpeted hallway toward the double mahogany doors of Blackwood & Associates. I walked slowly, shuffling my feet, playing the part of the medicated, overwhelmed husband. Camilla hooked her arm through mine, her grip bruising. "Almost there, darling," she whispered, her voice thick with false sweetness. Just a few signatures, and we never have to worry about anything again. We entered the office. Mr. Blackwood was waiting for us. He stood behind his massive oak desk, a monolith of legal authority. He was a man of few words, and even fewer smiles, which made him perfect for this moment. He knew the script. We had rehearsed it on a secure line while Camilla was in the shower. Mr. and Mrs. Turner Blackwood said, gesturing to the leather chairs. "And Mr. Miller, is it?" Jax nodded, slouching into a chair in the corner, trying to look bored but failing to hide the avarice in his eyes. "Just here to support my cousin." Blackwood adjusted his glasses and looked at me. His face was a mask of professional neutrality, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, respect perhaps, or maybe just the grim satisfaction of a hunter watching a trap snap shut. "We have prepared the documents for the release of the Turner Family Trust," Blackwood stated, placing a thick, bound document on the desk. As William explained, this is a legacy trust with specific activation clauses. Because the primary residence has been liquidated, the principal amount of $3,200,000 is now eligible for disbursement. $3.2 million. I heard Camilla's breath hitch. It was a sound of pure want. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on the paper stack, as if it were a holy scripture. However, Blackwood continued, his voice dropping an octave, becoming grave. "Because this trust bypasses standard probate and tax shelters, the IRS requires a very specific declaration of intent and asset disclosure. It is an affidavit of financial transparency. Essentially, it states that you are receiving these funds in good faith, that there are no other hidden assets, and that you accept full liability for the management of the funds. It is standard boilerplate for this level of wealth transfer, but it is lengthy." He pushed the document toward her. It was open to the signature page. The text was dense, single-spaced, a wall of legal jargon that was designed to make the eyes glaze over. Camilla reached for the pen before the document even settled on the wood. "Of course," she said, her voice breathless. "We understand. We just want to get it done." I watched her hand hover. This was it. The document wasn't an affidavit of transparency. It was a confession of judgment. Buried in the dense paragraphs of the third page, which she had just flipped past, without glancing at, were clauses that I had drafted with Blackwood late last night. Clauses where the signatory admitted to unauthorized use of spousal credit, acknowledged the existence of separate, undisclosed accounts used for illicit transfers, and surrendered all claims to marital assets in the event of proven infidelity or fraud. It was a legal suicide note, and she was holding the pen. "You should probably read it, Camilla," I said, my voice trembling just enough to sound like a nervous old man. Grandfather was tricky with his words. "We don't want to make a mistake." It was the perfect reverse psychology. If I told her to sign, she might hesitate. By telling her to read, I triggered her impatience. I triggered her arrogance. She thought I was dithering. She thought I was getting cold feet. "Oh, William, stop it!" she snapped, flashing a glare at me that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Mr. Blackwood is a professional. We trust him, don't we? We don't need to spend all morning reading fine print. We have a plane to catch." She looked at Blackwood. "Where do I sign?" Blackwood pointed to the line marked Beneficiary Spouse. "Right here, Mrs. Turner. And initial the bottom of each page to confirm you have reviewed the contents." She didn't review. She didn't even skim. She flipped the pages with a speed that was insulting to the legal profession, scribbling her initials in the corners like she was signing autographs. Flip. Scribble. Flip. Scribble. I watched her. I memorized the movement of her hand. Every loop of the pen was a bar in her cell. Every initial was a nail in her coffin. She was signing away her freedom, her future, and her alibi, and she was doing it with a smile on her face. She reached the final page. She pressed the pen down hard. Camilla Turner. The signature was bold, flamboyant, taking up more space than the line allowed. There she said, dropping the pen onto the desk with a clatter. Done. Blackwood pulled the document back. He checked the signature. He checked the initials. He picked up a notary stamp from his drawer. Thud. He stamped the document. Thud. He stamped the copy. It sounded like a gavel. It sounded like judgment. And the funds, Camilla asked, her hands trembling slightly now that the deed was done. When do they hit the account? Blackwood looked at his computer screen. He typed a few keystrokes. The transfer order has been logged, he lied smoothly. Given the size of the transaction and the nature of the trust, the bank requires a final in-person verification of the receiving account holder's identity. It is a security measure to prevent fraud. Camilla frowned. What does that mean? It means, Blackwood said, looking at me, that you and Mr. Turner need to go to the main branch of the bank downstairs. You need to present your IDs to the branch manager to lift the final hold. Once he verifies you are physically present, the money releases instantly. Downstairs? Camilla asked, looking at her watch. But we did everything here. It is bank policy, Mrs. Turner, Blackwood said, his voice brokering no argument. I am just the attorney. I don't hold the vault keys. The bank is on the first floor. Mr. Henderson is expecting you. It will take 5 minutes. Camilla stood up abruptly. Fine. 5 minutes. Come on, William. She grabbed my hand. Her palm was sweaty. Jack stood up from the corner. I will bring the car around front, he said. Be ready to roll. No, I said. My voice was quiet. They both stopped and looked at me. I cleared my throat, forcing a cough. Jack should come, I said. Mr. Henderson. He mentioned something about witnesses. Since Jax is here, it might smooth things over. We don't want any hiccups. Jax looked at Camilla. Camilla shrugged. Fine. Just come. Let's go. We walked out of the office. Camilla was practically vibrating. She squeezed my hand. $3 million, William, she whispered in the elevator, ignoring Jax. Can you imagine? We are going to be so happy. I looked at her reflection in the polished brass doors. I saw the greed distorting her features. I saw the monster underneath the makeup. Yes, I said softly. It is unimaginable. The elevator plummeted toward the ground floor. My stomach dropped, but not from fear. It was the sensation of a roller coaster cresting the final hill. The track was laid. The gravity was taking over. We stepped out into the lobby. The bank entrance was right there, glass doors gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. I saw the security guard standing by the podium. I saw the tellers behind the counter. And in the center of the lobby, waiting near the manager's desk, I saw a figure that made my heart swell. It wasn't Mr. Henderson. It was a police officer. And next to him, looking small but fierce, was Lily. Camilla didn't see them yet. She was looking at her phone, checking the Cayman account balance one last time. This way, darling, I said, guiding her toward the doors. She stepped through the glass threshold. She looked up. She saw the uniform. She saw Lily. She stopped dead. Her grip on my arm tightened until her nails dug into my skin through the fabric of my coat. What is she doing here? Camilla hissed. Why is the police here? I pulled my arm free from her grasp. I stepped away from her, putting a few feet of distance between us. I straightened my back. I let the tremor in my hand vanish. I let the confusion drain from my face, replaced by the cold, hard lines of the man who had built this trap brick by brick. I think I said, my voice echoing in the quiet bank lobby. They are here for the withdrawal, Camilla. But not the one you were expecting. She looked at me. She really looked at me for the first time in days. She saw the clarity in my eyes. She saw the absence of the drugs. She saw the architect, and in that moment, the color drained from her face, leaving her as white as the suit she wore. She knew. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to speak, but the only sound that came out was a small, strangled gasp of absolute terror. The storm had made landfall. The glass doors of the bank hissed shut behind us, cutting off the noise of the city and sealing us in a vacuum of hushed commerce and conditioned air. The lobby was expansive, a cathedral of marble floors and polished brass designed to make you feel small in the presence of money. But I didn't feel small. For the first time in months, I felt enormous. I felt like the skyscraper I had built that defied the wind. Camilla was still gripping my arm, her nails digging into my bicep through the layers of my coat. Her eyes were darting frantically between the police officer standing near the potted ficus and the teller counter where Mr. Tasser Henderson, the branch manager, was waiting with a solemn expression that should have been her second warning. But greed is a blinder. It narrows your vision until you can only see the prize, ignoring the cliff edge right in front of your feet. "Ignore them," she hissed in my ear, pulling me forward. "It is just a scare tactic. Lily must have called them with some lie about you being kidnapped. We just need to sign the verification. Once the money moves, we can deal with the brat." Jax was flanking my other side, his body tense, his hand hovering near his pocket. He looked like a cornered animal smelling a trap but unable to locate the trigger. He was sweating, a bead of moisture rolling down his temple despite the chill in the room. We reached the manager's desk. Mr. Henderson stood up. He didn't offer his hand. He didn't smile. He looked at me, then at Camilla, then at the police officer, who had taken a subtle step forward. "Mr. Turner, Mrs. Turner," Henderson said, his voice level and professional. "We are here for the verification," Camilla said, her voice shrill, breathless. "The attorney, Mr. Blackwood, sent over the authorization for the trust release. We just need to confirm identity so the wire can clear." She slammed her passport onto the desk. It slid across the polished wood and stopped at the edge. "I need this done now," she added. "We have a flight to catch." Henderson looked at the passport. He didn't pick it up. He clasped his hands behind his back. "I am afraid I cannot facilitate that transaction." "Mrs. Turner," he said. Camilla froze. "What do you mean you can't? The paperwork is signed. The trust is liquid. It is my money." "It is not a matter of paperwork, ma'am," Henderson replied. "The account in question, along with the joint checking account and Mr. Turner's personal savings, has been placed under a total freeze." "Freeze!" Camilla shrieked. The sound echoed off the high ceilings, causing several customers at the teller line to turn and stare. "Who froze it? This is illegal. You cannot freeze my assets without a court order." "We have a directive," Henderson said calmly. "Due to suspicious activity and a flagged report of elder financial exploitation." Camilla spun on her heel to face me. She grabbed the lapels of my coat, shaking me. "William, tell him you authorized this. Tell him you are in your right mind and you want your wife to have the money." This was it. The moment I had rehearsed in the mirror. The moment I had lived for through the long, drug-hazed nights. She was looking at me, expecting the confused, pliable old man who needed her permission to breathe. She was expecting me to stammer, to look at Henderson with watery eyes and demand he listen to my wife. Instead, I reached up and took her hands off my coat. I didn't pull them away gently. I removed them with a firm, deliberate force, gripping her wrists and pushing them down to her sides. I stepped back. I rolled my shoulders, hearing a satisfying pop in my neck as I released the tension I had been carrying for days. I stood up to my full height, 6 feet and 2 inches, no longer stooped, no longer shrinking. I adjusted my tie, centering the knot perfectly. I smoothed the front of my jacket. Then I looked her in the eye. The cloudiness she was used to seeing was gone. The confusion was gone. The love was gone. I don't need to tell him anything. Camilla, I said. My voice was a baritone rumble, steady and clear, projecting through the lobby with the authority of a man who used to command construction sites of 500 men. He already knows. Camilla blinked, stepping back as if I had slapped her. Her mouth opened and closed, struggling to process the transformation happening in front of her. William, she whispered. What? What are you doing? I am unfreezing the assets, I said coldly, but not the ones you think. I am unfreezing the truth. Jack stepped forward, his face twisting into a snarl. Hey, old man, don't start acting weird. You are off your meds. You are confused. I turned my gaze to Jax. It was a look of pure, unadulterated loathing. Shut up, Jax, I said, and do not call me old man. You are a grifter living in my guest house, driving my car, and sleeping with my wife. You are nothing. The air left the room. The customers were watching now, openly staring. The bank tellers had stopped working. The silence was absolute. Camilla looked at Jax, then back at me. Her face was a mask of crumbling plaster. William, honey, you are having an episode, she tried, her voice trembling, pitching for sympathy from the onlookers. Please, you are scaring me. You don't know what you are saying. The dementia, it makes you paranoid. Dementia, I repeated. The word tasted bitter. Is that what we are calling it now? Is that the clinical term for being fed haloperidol in my morning protein shake? Camilla flinched. How did you... She started, then stopped herself. No. That is crazy. You are imagining things. Am I asked. I reached into my inner pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't unlock it with a shaky thumb. I swiped the screen with precision. I tapped the audio file I had queued up. I turned the volume to the maximum. I held the phone up in the middle of the bank lobby like a priest holding up a holy relic. Listen, I said to the room. The audio crackled for a second, and then Camilla's voice filled the space, tinny but unmistakable. It was the recording from the bathroom, the one Lily had found on the iPad, followed by the conversation I had recorded myself last night, while feigning sleep. The recording played, I am sick of him, Jax. He smells like old paper and desperation. Just hold on, babe. The wire hits, and we toss the carcass. By the time he realizes the joint account is empty, we will be sipping margaritas on a boat he paid for. Camilla's hands flew to her mouth. The recording continued. Jax's voice this time. Why wait? Just up the dosage. If his heart stops before the transfer, we are still the beneficiaries. It is cleaner. No divorce lawyers. Then Camilla again, Monday. We do it Monday, after the bank. I will mix it in his coffee. He won't feel a thing. I let the recording play until the end. Until the laughter. The cruel, mocking laughter of two people celebrating a murder they hadn't yet committed. When silence returned to the lobby, it was heavy and suffocating. Every eye in the room was fixed on Camilla and Jax. The customers looked horrified. Mr. Henderson looked like he wanted to vomit. Camilla was shaking her head, backing away. That is not real, she stammered. That is manipulated. Deep fake. You made that up, I took a step toward her. She retreated until her back hit the velvet rope of the queue line. It is real, Camilla, I said. Just like the pharmacy receipt in your purse for the antipsychotics. Just like the one-way tickets to the Cayman Islands on your phone. Just like the fact that you have been poisoning me for 6 months to steal a house my wife and I built before you were even born. I looked at Jax. He looked ready to run, his eyes darting to the exit, but the police officer had moved to block the revolving door. You thought I was weak, I said to him. You thought I was a senile fool you could push around. You forgot one thing. I am an architect. I know how to spot a crack in the foundation. And you too, you are nothing but cracks. I turned back to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice calm and professional. I am formally revoking the power of attorney document my wife forged 3 months ago. I am also requesting a full audit of all transfers made from my accounts in the last year, and the wire transfer for the sale of the Lake Forest property. Henderson nodded, his face pale. Cancelled, Mr. Turner. We flagged it the moment you called this morning. The funds have been returned to the escrow account. Cancelled, Camilla whispered. The word broke her. Her knees gave way, and she slumped against the manager's desk. The money, the millions, the freedom. It all evaporated in the sterile air of the bank. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. But this time I knew they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of a predator who realized the cage door had just slammed shut. William, please, she sobbed. It was him. It was all Jack's. He made me do it. He threatened me. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked down at her. I felt nothing. No love. No hate. Just the cold satisfaction of a job well done. Save it for the jury. Camilla, I said. I turned to the police officer who was now walking toward us, handcuffs gleaming on his belt. Next to him, Lily stepped forward. She was holding a thick manila folder. She walked right up to me and handed it to the officer. Officer, I said, these are the medical records my wife forged to have me committed to a state facility. And inside is the lab report from the pills I retrieved from my medicine cabinet this morning. I think you will find they match the prescription found in Mr. Miller's possession. The officer nodded. He looked at Camilla and Jax. Camilla Turner. Jackson. Miller, he said, his voice booming. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and elder abuse. Jax lunged. He didn't lunge at the cop. He lunged at me. It was a desperate, animalistic move, a final attempt to hurt the man who had outsmarted him. But I was ready. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I stood my ground, the marble floor solid beneath my feet. Before he could reach me, the officer tackled him, slamming him into the teller counter. As they wrestled him into cuffs, I looked at Camilla. She was staring at me with a look of pure hatred. You ruined everything, she hissed. You old bastard. You ruined everything. I straightened my cuffs. I looked at my reflection in the glass partition. I didn't see an old bastard. I saw a survivor. No, Camilla, I said softly. I just fixed the renovation. I turned to Lily. She was smiling a fierce, proud smile. I held out my arm to her. Shall we go, darling? I asked. I believe we have a house to move back into. She took my arm. We walked toward the door, passing the handcuffed figures of the people who had tried to destroy us. I didn't look back. The structure of their lies had collapsed. The dust was settling, and I was still standing. The silence that followed the end of the recording was absolute and heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. The customers in the bank had stopped their transactions, the tellers were frozen with their hands hovering over their keyboards, and Mr. Henderson looked as though he wanted to disappear beneath his mahogany desk. But I did not look away. I kept my eyes fixed on Camilla, watching the exact moment the last vestiges of her confidence evaporated, leaving behind only the naked, trembling fear of a woman who realizes she has nowhere left to run. She tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock, but no sound came out. She looked at Jax for help, but he had already taken a step away from her, his survival instinct kicking in as he tried to put physical distance between himself and the woman he had conspired with. It was pathetic. It was satisfying. You think an audio recording is enough? She finally managed to choke out, her voice thin and reedy. Any good lawyer will get that thrown out. You invaded my privacy. You are senile. You don't know what you are doing. I shook my head slowly. I wasn't the one who needed a lawyer, Camilla. I wasn't the one who had spent the last 6 months constructing a house of cards on a foundation of lies. I didn't do this alone, I said, my voice echoing off the marble walls. I had help. The kind of help you tried to erase. I turned toward the entrance of the bank. The revolving door spun and Lily walked in. She wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. She walked with her head held high, her shoulders back, holding a thick manila folder against her chest like a shield. She looked at me and then she looked at Camilla, and the expression on her face was one of pure, unadulterated justice. Flanking her were two uniformed police officers, their hands resting on their belts, their faces grim. Camilla gasped. She took a stumbling step back, her heels clicking on the floor. "Lily," she whispered. "What are you doing here?" "I am here to finish what you started," Lily said, her voice steady and strong. She walked up to the manager's desk and slammed the folder down in front of Camilla. The sound was like a gunshot. "Open it," I commanded. Camilla's hands shook so badly she could barely lift the cover. She flipped it open. Inside were the documents she had paid $50,000 for just yesterday. The fake medical history, the forged diagnosis of early-onset dementia, the application for involuntary commitment to a state-run facility in rural Illinois. I watched her read her own handwriting in the margins. I watched her see the signature of the forger she thought was a doctor. "We found this in your nightstand this morning, Camilla," I said. "While you were busy packing my bags for a vacation I was never going to take." Lily was busy unpacking your exit strategy. I reached over and tapped the paper. "Involuntary commitment," I read aloud. "Due to violent outbursts and inability to perform self-care." "Is that what you were going to tell them, that I was violent? That I was a danger to myself?" Camilla looked up at me, her eyes wide and wet. "William, no. It wasn't like that. It was just a precaution. In case you got worse." "There is nothing wrong with me, Camilla," I roared, my control finally slipping just a fraction. "The only thing wrong with me was you." I nodded to the police officers. They stepped forward, the heavy jingle of their equipment, the only sound in the room. "Camilla Turner," the first officer said, his voice booming. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery of medical documents." Camilla screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of denial. "No, you can't! I am his wife! He is sick! He is making this up!" The officer grabbed her wrist. He spun her around. The click of the handcuffs was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a lock snapping shut. But this time I wasn't the one inside the cage. Jax tried to run. He saw the cuffs go onto Camilla and he bolted toward the side exit. But the second officer was faster. He tackled Jax before he made it 3 steps, slamming him into the velvet ropes of the queue line. Jax went down hard, cursing, spitting, fighting like a trapped rat. "Get off me!" he yelled. "I didn't sign anything." It was her. "She made me do it." She said he was dying anyway. Camilla stopped struggling. She stared at Jax, betrayed by her partner, the moment the heat got too high. "You coward!" she shrieked. "You told me to increase the dosage. You told me to get rid of him before the transfer." And there it was. The final nail. The confession in front of witnesses, in front of law enforcement, in front of the bank manager. They were tearing each other apart, just as I knew they would. The officers hauled them both to their feet. Camilla's white power suit was rumpled, her hair falling out of its tight bun. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were black holes of hate. "I gave you the best years of my life," she hissed. "No, Camilla," I said, stepping closer to her, so close she could see the clarity in my eyes. "You took 2 years of my life. You took my trust. You took my peace. But you didn't take my dignity. And you certainly didn't take my money." "Take them away," I said to the officer. As they dragged them toward the door, passing the stunned customers, I felt a hand slip into mine. It was Lily. She was trembling, but she was smiling. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. I looked down at her. I squeezed her hand. We did it, I agreed. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. He looked pale, shaking as he gathered the scattered papers on his desk. Mr. Turner, I don't know what to say. I am so sorry. We had no idea. I looked at the banker. I straightened my tie. It is not your fault, Mr. Henderson. Evil is very good at wearing a disguise. Just make sure those accounts remain frozen until I bring you the court order to dissolve the marriage. I will, sir. Absolutely. I turned to Lily. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But it was a good exhaustion. It was the feeling of a building that had weathered a hurricane and was still standing. Let's go home, Lily, I said. Our real home. We walked out of the bank into the gray Chicago afternoon. The wind was still biting, but it felt clean. It felt like a new season. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that wasn't tainted by poison or lies. The nightmare was over. The architect had cleared the site. Now it was time to rebuild. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and despair. It was a stark contrast to the lavender-scented bedroom, where Camilla used to whisper lies into my ear. She sat on the other side of the metal table, her wrists cuffed to the bar, bolted to the floor. The orange jumpsuit washed out her complexion, making her look older and harder. The glamorous socialite from the bank lobby was gone, replaced by a desperate woman facing the ruin of her own making. When I sat down, she did not look up immediately. She was staring at her hands, stripped of the rings I had bought her. When she finally raised her eyes, they were red-rimmed and swollen. She tried to summon a smile, a ghost of the expression she used to use to get whatever she wanted, but it faltered. "William," she croaked. "You came. I knew you would come." I placed my hands on the table, folding them calmly. "I did not come to save you, Camilla. I came to close the file." She leaned forward as much as the chains would allow. "William, please. You have to listen to me. It was Jackson. He threatened me. He said he would hurt Lily. I did it to protect you. Everything I did was to protect you." I stared at her. Even now, facing decades in prison, she was still trying to run the con. It was almost impressive in its audacity. "Stop," I said softly. "We have the recordings, Camilla. We have the texts where you joked about my heart stopping. We have the video of you buying the poison. There is no version of this story where you are the victim." Her face hardened. The mask dropped. The pleading eyes vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating gaze of the predator I had seen in the bank. She sat back, the chains rattling. "Fine," she spat. "You want to play it that way? Fine. Put me in jail. I will serve my time. But do not think you are walking away from this unscathed, William." "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I knew exactly where she was going. "I am your wife," she said, a cruel smile touching her lips. "We have been married for 2 years. Illinois is an equitable distribution state. I know the law. Even if I go to prison, I am entitled to my share of the marital assets. Half the house, half the savings, half of everything you earned while we were together." She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You think you won. You are going to be writing checks to my commissary account for the rest of your life. I might be in a cell, but I will be a rich woman in a cell. And when I get out, I will still be younger than you. I will still have your money." I waited for her to finish. I let her enjoy her moment of perceived leverage. I let her believe that the piece of paper we signed at the courthouse 2 years ago was her golden parachute. I reached into my jacket pocket. I did not pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. It was not from my lawyer. It was from the private investigator I had hired the moment I left the library. "You are right about one thing, Camilla," I said, sliding the paper across the steel table. "The law is very specific about marital assets. Wives are entitled to their share." She looked at the paper, confused. What is this? But that brings us to a problem. I continued, my voice steady. You see, to claim marital assets, you have to actually be married. She frowned. We are married. We had a ceremony. We have a license. I leaned in. The paper on the table was a photocopy of a marriage license from Clark County, Nevada. It was dated 5 years ago. This is a marriage license between a Mr. Gary Sinise and a Miss Camilla Vance, I said. Camilla went still. She stopped breathing. I had my team run a background check on you, Camilla. A real one. Not the surface-level check I did when we met. It turns out you and Gary had a lovely wedding in Las Vegas. And here is the interesting part. I could not find a divorce decree. Not in Nevada, not in Illinois, not anywhere. I watched the realization dawn on her face. It started at her eyes and spread downward, a paralysis of absolute defeat. Bigamy is a felony in this state, I said. But more importantly, it renders any subsequent marriage null and void ab initio. That is a legal term. It means from the beginning. In the eyes of the law, we were never married. You are not my wife. You are just a woman who lived in my house. Camilla stared at the document. Her hands began to shake, rattling the chains against the table. Gary, she whispered. He was supposed to file the papers. He told me he filed them. You should have checked, I said. Because now you have no claim to my house. No claim to my savings. No claim to a single dime. You are not leaving this marriage with half my assets. You are leaving with exactly what you brought into it. Nothing. She looked up at me. The defiance was gone. The greed was gone. All that was left was a yawning abyss of emptiness. She realized that the years she spent conning me, the time she invested, the crimes she committed, it was all for zero return. No, she whimpered. No, please. William, I have nothing. If you leave me like this, I will have nothing. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I looked down at the stranger I had slept next to for 700 nights. You have a husband in Nevada, I said. Maybe he will send you money for the commissary. I turned my back on her. William, she screamed. William, do not leave me here. I am sorry, I will sign anything. I walked to the heavy steel door. I knocked twice for the guard. As the door buzzed open, I looked back one last time. She was weeping her head on the table, defeated not by the police but by her own sloppy past. Goodbye, Mrs. Sinise, I said. The door clanged shut behind me, sealing her in her concrete tomb. I walked down the hallway of the police station. My steps echoed on the linoleum. I felt lighter with every stride. The legal tether was cut. The emotional tether was severed. I was a free man. I walked out into the sunlight. Lily was waiting for me, by the car. She looked anxious. Is it over? She asked. I smiled at her. It was a real smile. It is over, I said. She did not just lose the game, Lily. She was never even a player. We got into the car. I did not look back at the police station. I looked forward toward Lake Forest, toward the oak tree in the backyard, and toward a future that finally belonged to us again. The drive back to Lake Forest was the quietest hour of my life, but for the first time in 2 years, the silence wasn't filled with tension. It was the comfortable, heavy silence of a storm that has finally blown itself out. The Chicago skyline faded in the rearview mirror, taking with it the police station, the bank, and the woman who had tried to erase me. I pulled the car into the long, winding driveway. The late afternoon sun was filtering through the branches of the old oak tree I had planted with Sarah 30 years ago. It cast long shadows across the lawn, stretching toward the house that was supposed to belong to a stranger by tomorrow morning. There was a sold sign planted firmly in the front yard. A bright red sticker slapped across the front announced the victory of the real estate agent. I stopped the car. I didn't turn off the engine. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel looking at that sign. Dad, Lily said softly from the passenger seat. What are we going to do? The movers are coming tomorrow. The buyers. They think they own it. I turned off the ignition. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out of the car. My legs felt steady. My head was clear. The last traces of the sedatives had washed out of my system, replaced by the clean, sharp clarity of survival. I walked over to the sign. It was made of sturdy wood driven deep into the soil. I grabbed the post with both hands. I didn't rock it back and forth to loosen it. I pulled it straight up with a grunt of exertion that felt incredibly satisfying. The earth gave way. I walked to the edge of the driveway and tossed the sign into the bushes. They don't own anything. Lily, I said, dusting off my hands. She got out of the car, looking at the house with wide, confused eyes. But you signed the papers. I saw the text from the agent. I smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but it was mine. I am an architect, Lily. I read the fine print. When Mr. Blackwood drafted the closing documents, I had him insert a clause, a seller's right of rescission, based on material changes in financial status prior to the wire transfer. I walked up the steps to the front door. When the bank froze my assets this morning due to fraud, I technically became insolvent for the duration of the investigation. The contract voided itself the moment those handcuffs clicked onto Camilla's wrists. The house is ours. It never stopped being ours. Lily let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for months. She ran up the steps and hugged me. We stood there on the porch, father and daughter survivors of a domestic war. Let's go inside, I said. The house was cold. It smelled faintly of Camilla's perfume, a lingering ghost I would have to scrub away. The furniture was draped in dust sheets ready for the movers. It looked like a mausoleum. I walked through the living room, pulling the sheets off the furniture. I revealed Sarah's favorite armchair. I revealed the piano Lily used to play. I was reclaiming the space. I was exorcising the demon. We went into the kitchen. I opened the fridge and took out the pitcher of protein shake Camilla had prepared for the week. I poured it down the sink, watching the thick, chemically laced sludge disappear. I rinsed the pitcher until the water ran clear. Lily sat at the island watching me. I thought you were gone, Dad, she whispered. I thought I had lost you. I turned off the tap. I leaned against the counter and looked at my daughter. She was smarter than me. She was braver than me. You almost did, I admitted. I was blind, Lily. I was lonely, and I let my loneliness make me stupid. I let a stranger come into our home and push you into the basement. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that. You don't have to, she said. You came back. That is all that matters. I shook my head. It is not enough. I almost gave away your inheritance to a criminal. I almost let her steal your future. I walked over to my briefcase, which I had left on the counter. I opened it and pulled out a thick binder. It wasn't legal documents or police reports. It was a portfolio of investments, the deeds to the properties, the access codes to the accounts I had protected. I slid the binder across the island to her. What is this? She asked. It is everything I said. It is the family trust. It is the house. It is the portfolio. I am transferring the management of the Sarah Turner Foundation and the family estate to a joint stewardship. Starting tomorrow, you are not just my daughter. You are my partner. Nothing gets signed. Nothing gets sold, and no one enters this house without your approval. Lily stared at the binder. Dad, I am 17. I know, I said. And you are the only person in this world who saw the truth when I couldn't. You have the sharpest eyes I know. I need those eyes, Lily. I need you to help me rebuild. She reached out and touched the leather cover of the binder. She looked up at me and I saw a new maturity in her gaze. She wasn't a child anymore. The last week had forged her into a woman. Okay, she said. We do it together. Together, I agreed, We spent the rest of the evening walking through the house. We opened the windows to let the cold, fresh lake air blow through the rooms, chasing away the scent of jasmine and lies. We went down to the basement and brought Lily's things back up to her real room. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The work of putting our lives back together was a language we both understood. As the sun began to set, painting the sky over Lake Forest in shades of purple and gold, we stood on the back deck looking at the oak tree. It had weathered storms. It had lost branches. But the roots were deep. I took a sip of water, clean, cold, and safe. The nightmare was over. The house was quiet, not the predatory silence of the last few months, but the peaceful silence of a home that was safe again. There were no secrets in the walls anymore. There were no cameras in the teddy bears. There was just us. I put my arm around my daughter's shoulders. "What do you want for dinner?" I asked. "Pizza," she said immediately. "The cheap kind, with extra pepperoni." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in a year without wondering if I was losing my mind. "Pizza it is," I said. We went inside and locked the door. But this time we weren't locking ourselves in with a monster. We were locking the world out. We were safe. And as I dialed the pizza place, I knew that for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Home. I learned that loneliness is a dangerous fog that can make a predator like a savior. For 2 years, I let my desire for connection blind me to the red flags, almost costing me my life and my daughter's future. But the most vital lesson I carry forward is that it is never too late to wake up. We often believe we are too old, too entrenched, or too broken to fight back. But that is a lie. Dignity has no expiration date. If you find yourself living in a house built on deception, do not be afraid to burn it down. The ashes of a lie are the only foundation upon which you can build a true home. If you believe that justice is worth fighting for, no matter the cost, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and survival.